Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to a special edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. That's right, it's not the regular schedule. We're here on another time frame, another time space continuum. And I'm here, not only here myself, but I am joined here today by LuFisto, legendary women's wrestler who's worked the independent circuit for over 20 years, a fantastic career that she has had. And she's joining me today for a little one-on-one time. I get to talk to her because I'm awesome. And because we also want to dive into everything that's been going on with CZW. But LuFisto, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you for having me on this beautiful day.
I know it's beautiful today, you know, and we're in this period where we're losing we're getting rid of the confinement. We're able to stretch our legs a little more, get a little more sunshine. But you know, as far as sunshine and rays go, your career is quite the sunshine in and about itself. You've shined all over the place. Had like I said, over 20. If I'm not mistaken, right? It's 23 years. If I'm not mistaken.
24 on June 19th.
On June 19th, what was your first match? Tell me, when did that happen on June 14th, 24 years ago?
Yeah, it was June 1997. It was in a city called Drummondville.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like between Montreal and Quebec City. And I remember back then we had planned most of it like before because there was no other women. There was one other woman, so we had to pre-plan stuff because I don't know if it was that they didn't trust us or she didn't really trust me for sure being so new. And I remember in the middle of the match, everything changed completely. So I had to learn how to improvise like real quick. I don't know why things changed. I don't know why she changed her mind, but everything went like, oh, whatever we planned is not good. So already I was freaking out and like, I managed to do pretty good for the first time. I remember the promoter back then, Mr. Henri Dusty, who unfortunately passed away, but he was like, hey, kid, you did good. I'm like, oh, God, you tell me. I was like, I felt like everything went wrong because I was like, that was not planned. But I was like, hey, I'm still here. So
yeah, exactly. Clearly, it went well enough for you to continue because you've had quite the career. You know, you've wrestled. First of all, you know, yes, you're a woman who wrestles, but you've wrestled in death matches and you've wrestled legends like Nick Gage, Necro Butcher, Zandig. You beat Kevin Owens to be the first CZW Iron Man champion, first female Iron Man champion as well. And you've wrestled contemporaries like Nikki Cross, Becky Lynch, Asuka, just to drop a few, you know, just a couple like that. And throughout it all, you've been neck deep in the evolution of women's wrestling. You know, before Stephanie McMahon took care of the evolution of wrestling, women's wrestling. How has it changed today from when you started? How has the evolution of women's wrestling changed today? And I know you've been, and I don't want to minimize as well your contributions. You've been instrumental in as far as intergender matches, especially in Canada as well. How do you feel all of that has changed in regards to women's wrestling, intergender wrestling, from when you started to where we are today?
Well, when I started, it was more about the women on the show are an attraction. They don't really matter. They have very limited time. They're they're an extra to the show. They're not really part of the show. They're an extra. And it's like the popcorn match or the, you know, right after intermission match or
a cool down.
The cool down or something like that. It was not taken seriously. A lot of women were not trained because they just wanted two women in there. So when you came there with an actual wrestling classes background, I remember a promoter, my opponent canceled. He's like, oh, you'll wrestle my wife. I'm like, is she a wrestler? And he was like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? But back then it's like, oh yeah, I just want two women in the ring and people are going to, you know, enjoy the show or whatever. And I mean, you're talking about the evolution. The evolution has not happened in the past 5 years. The evolution is like spreaded through years and years, like over 20 years from the independence to the knockouts to the WWE. Like it's been a very, very long road from, like I said, being an attraction to actually getting into promotions where they were like, I was the only woman, but thank God the promoters were like, well, we know you want to wrestle, so we're gonna put you in there with the guys because that's what you want. But the best way to become a better professional wrestler is to wrestle people who are better than you.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I could do was to wrestle the guys because they were so much better than me. They had more experience, and there was no other women back then. So wanted to wrestle the guys. Of course, that was not a popular decision because, like, oh, she thinks she's better than us, and she doesn't belong here. And I got stretched, and I got punched, and I got, like, long story short, like, they didn't want a woman to be in the ring as an equal. And today, well, you see intergender wrestling everywhere. I have, like you briefly mentioned it, I have to fight the law in Canada so women could be seen as equal in the ring and actually be able to fight men, as a female competitor, as a female athlete. And so from point A to where we are today, the evolution, the actual revolution, I should say, because it's been so hard and it's been, grinding and clawing and crying and bleeding. And it's been, a lot of people ask me, why did you do hardcore? Well, I felt back then I didn't have a choice because I needed to prove that I was as tough and I could do everything the guys were doing. So, yeah, it's a very long road to where we are today, and it's important that we don't go back.
Right, absolutely. Do you think that one of the reasons, and I'm just speculating here, they're probably, wrestling schools back then probably weren't very adapted to train women, right? That's probably, so I can totally understand why you were like, well, I need to get better. I have to wrestle guys because they're not training women, right? That had to be a factor.
I remember my first teacher when I showed up there was the only girl. And he's like, you know how hard this is. Like, people don't know how hard wrestling is. Everybody thinks it's fake, but trust me, it is not. You can say it's staged, but when you're going to fall, it's going to hurt. A ring is made of it's pieces of woods and pieces of steel. And they were more concerned about, oh, it's going to hurt a woman. But he was like, he was like very, very honest about, this is how it goes and this is how it is. And I'm telling you, women in professional wrestling are not taken seriously. But if you really want it, I'm only asking you this: show up every practice. Show up and show me you can do it. So he was that was my teacher, Pierre. He was very nice into being really blunt right from the start. It's like, that's going to be tough physically and even more mentally. And oh my God, was he right?
Well, I mean, you stuck through, you made it, right? I mean, we're here 24, almost 24 years later, and you're still here. All right, let's talk about the dirty business now a little bit. So you, like we said, you've had a long career. You've wrestled all over the place. You went to Mexico. You started wrestling a lot in the United States for Combat Zone Wrestling, WSU as well, a little later on. How did you get started wrestling with CZW, because I'm Canadian, right? CZW and WSU.
I have been wrestling in the States a little bit, like here and there before, mostly Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine for Tony Atlas for Green Mountain Wrestling.
Right, okay.
Another one in Vermont called ATWA. So I was still going in the States here and there, and I have been to NWA Nashville for Burt Prentice. Little places here and there. And for CCW, I don't remember what exactly happened, but I think that's how it happened. I was with IWS in Montreal with Sexy Eddie, and we were a tag team called the Missionaries of Violence. And we were playing that couple kind of hardcore couple thing, and it worked really well. And CCW was back then like exchanging talent with IWS. Okay. So Kevin Steen was going, and El Generico, and Frankie the Mobster, XS69. So me and Eddie, we went there and we stayed.
you just hung around, and this was under the regime of Zandig, of course. That's when he was owner.
Yeah, it was John Zandig then.
And you also wrestled under when DJ Hyde took over, right? You had a few matches there as well. Can you tell me about the differences between the owners, locker room, the environment? Tell me, were there any striking differences between those two ownership regimes? Let's call them that.
I remember when I got to Zandig first time. I was like 26, and I remember he would see me just as the girl, but eventually when he saw that I really wanted it and I was taking the shots and stuff, he started to call me kid. So he kind of became like a father figure to me. And he was like really always like pushing me. You can do it. You can do it. It's like the cage match. I was not supposed to be in the cage of death. Right. And out of nowhere, he goes out. It's like, hey, kid, you're in the cage tonight. I'm like, what? And then he just like, you can do it. I know you can. And he kind of pushed me. And that was it. And Zendig back then was more, I think it was more kind of, not that it was unorganized, but it was, because he had like partners like Maven who were trying, like, I think it was more on the spot thing. Like he had his idea, but a lot of guys were pitching in and changing stuff. And, but I feel back then, like I didn't know what was going on much enough to comment. All I know is I would show up and grab, what's my booking? And sometimes it would change. Sometimes it would stay the same. Like I mentioned in another podcast, something people didn't know. I was supposed to win the Best of the Best 2008.
Really?
Until the guy politicked me out of this win. And in the end, when people they choose me as the people's choice, Zandig grabbed me as I was walking backstage and he goes, hey kid, I'm sorry. I should have stuck to my guns. You were the one that they wanted to win. And I let politics like ruin this special moment, and I apologize. And that's the type of relationship I had with John Zandig, like more like a father figure. Sure. Like I said, at the beginning, I just think he's just a girl with tits and ass, whatever. And then with time, I just think he changed his mind. With DJ, I didn't wrestle for DJ when he bought the company right away. Like I didn't get booked. But when WSU was bought by CCW, that's when I got the call again, let's say. And they wanted to have WSU being like the East Coast Shimmer. It was all about bringing like serious women's wrestling. They wanted to almost be like a sister or, even a competition to Shimmer, where like women's wrestling was like very important. So Sure. They had a new title made, and they were talking, they never got them, but I think they were talking about new tag team championships. And they did like a cage match, and they wanted it to be like big and very like professionally focused on women's wrestling. So that's how we all got to WSU. And actually, I was the first champion of the new WSU, I should say, because before that there was Jessica Havoc, there was Mercedes. But when they actually bought and the new championship stuff, I was the first one. And of course, I started to hear the few things that I've never mentioned before because I thought it was not my place. But the girls were telling me like, hey, he says that he's not going to book me because I don't look, I don't know if I can say that, but fuckable.
Sure. Oh yeah, I'm not PG. Go ahead.
Okay, you're not PG. Good. I should have asked before.
That's fine.
And one of my girls in Quebec said, hey, you know what he told me? He said, I have tits and ass, but I got a tummy, so I'm no good for his promotion. I was like, shit. Okay. So I've heard things here and there. Personally, with him, I never had a problem. I thought we had a somewhat good relationship, but I always felt like there was not that trust. I've never had with him the trust I had with Zandig, that's for sure.
Sure.
Zandig to me is like when people talk about Paul Heyman, like the guys would have died for him almost because he was so into it and he loved this product so much, and it was his baby. Like with Zandig, it was the same. Like you wanted to make him proud. You wanted to show him that's like, hey, I'm here for you and I'm gonna deliver. And that's the type of like feeling you had with Zandig. Like you wanted to go like all the way for him. And with everything that was going on, and I was like, you're always hoping like things are going to get better. And they had Blake Thomas as a booker who was really focused on making this a good product. And I mean, with everything that was going, like, it kind of it didn't die because it kept going, but you obviously saw the crowds from CCW and WSU like going down and down and down. And I was not going for a while, and I remember a girl texting me, it's like, hey, there's like 30 people in the crowd. I was like, wow. The first WSU, there was like 300, and I remember wrestling for John Zandig for 800 and 1,000 people. Sure. So, yeah, that would be the differences.
Those are some, those are pretty striking differences right there, and especially in the relationships for sure. Mm-hmm. Fast forward a little bit, and you sort of a couple of months ago, right? You started popping up on social media and questioning some of CZW's marketing ideas behind their women's wrestling shows that they've been promoting on certain digital network places, let's put it that way. Re-releasing some pay-per-views with titles like All Assets Revealed, Top Heavy and Tough, Hair-Pulling Catfights. You took offense to this. When did you? What was the moment? When did you realize that CZW was doing this?
It's end of March because a fan tweeted, I can't believe they're calling Mercedes Martinez and LuFisto a catfight. And I'm like, excuse me, a link, please? He sends me the link, and then I see the press releases. They're putting on all the websites, like the 411s and whatever. And that's where I see it. Sweaty girls and dirty fights and catfights, like bearing all out. And then it's me and Mercedes, and I know that this show is from what we signed up for was called like Breaking Barriers. So right. It's night and day, and I'm like, and I just tweeted like, really, CZW, are you gonna go that way to get like views or something? And like a few minutes after, they reached out. We're sorry. I mean, we understand that you're upset, and we do apologize. We tried to do something, but the third party we sold the footage wants to brand you guys this way, and we respect you. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, this is not what I signed up for, and this is not what my colleagues signed up for. We already like wear sexy, gear as it is, and so are the guys. They're wearing trunks. I mean, it is what it is. It's professional wrestling. We wear spandex. But I was telling them, like how can you like change the names like this? This like, it was a very short discussion. Like, but when I saw that they were not like, oh, we can't do anything, we're sorry, like, don't care. So I was like, okay. So I just stopped talking to them, and I've waited. It's like, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna give them like a month or two or something. Hopefully they will change their mind. They'll figure out that this is wrong, that we did not say yes to this, that they promised us that this was gonna be like professional wrestling, and no, they kept going. I saw another one and then another one, and I'm like, okay, that's enough. Like, they obviously do not care, and like breaking a promise, or like we understand when we go to a wrestling show that we do give the rights to our image. As independent wrestling. That's how you survive. You sell the footage, which is fine, but you never imagine that they're going to change the name of it, capture like images of your crotch, of your ass, of your tits, and make them like full blown and try to sell the footage like that. Like, you think it's going to end up on High Spot, it's going to end up on independent wrestling. Sure. They're going to sell DVDs, and we're all good with that. It's not a problem. They have to survive, and that's how they pay the shows, and that's how they pay the website fees and whatever. It's all good. But when you change completely what was the product about, and I always mention the fan that reached out. It's like, I discovered you through this because I thought I was buying something else. I was like, oh, I'm sorry for you, because that's like false publicity. Yeah. Got the guys into sweaty girls and catfights, and then buys this and gets professional wrestling. I'm like, I'm sorry for you, because you've been screwed. That's not yeah, that's not what we're doing. I'm sorry. But he was very kind, very nice. But it's, it's little things like that, how you discover stuff, because they will email you. Fans do, and they tweet, and a lot of them are really, the greatest thing I think about women wrestling fans is they know the evolution. They know the struggle. They know the story behind it.
Sure.
And so when they see something wrong, they're like, hey, and they're really vocal about it. And that's how, because I don't, CCW never tried to contact any of us to say, hey, is this all right?
Nothing
hey,
at all.
Do this. Hey, we sold the footage, so if you see it, it's out there. Nothing. They just hey, you said yes to be on our show. Go to hell. We don't give a damn, and we're gonna make money out of it, and that's it.
So even after you started making, I'm talking before the YouTube video you made, they never reached out to you outside of the, hey, we're sorry, we respect you. They never tried to make amends. No. No,
the only time they reached out right after my little comment on Twitter, and then I did then nothing. Then I did the video. Then they released that statement saying, "Hey, we sold the footage. Sorry," and nothing to me or either of my my fellow wrestlers. Absolutely nothing. Not even Stonecutter Media didn't say anything. I don't know if they're going to go with their next pay-per-view. I don't know what they're going to do. We have no clue. All we know is that they're doing whatever they want with our image and name.
And it's fascinating when you think that Stonecutter Media is actually a majority owner, or is a big investor in CZW, and it's like, we sold the rights to Stonecutter. It's like, wait, aren't you all the same? You're all in the same boat here. It's not that far apart. You're probably just a couple of doors down from each other.
Yeah, here's the thing. CCW and Stonecutter Media tried to get other promotions on board, including Rise and Shimmer, and both of them went like, "Whoa, no, this is disgusting. We're not doing that." But CZ said, "Oh yes, we're in. We don't care."
Oh, that's interesting.
That's where the main problem is. People were mixing all kinds of stuff, saying, "Yeah, but you girls, wearing sexy outfits. Some of you girls are selling pictures." I'm like, it doesn't matter what you do on your own time with your own body or how you present yourself. That's your thing. But let's say you are a mechanic and you go to a job to do to change tires or something, and you bend down and somebody takes a picture of your ass, then sells it online. It's like, hey, you agreed to be there. Whoa, that's not the same thing. I was there as a mechanic. So that's if I need an example, that would be one. Or if you want something more wrestling oriented, I always say hey, Finn Balor's really sexy. He wears very, very small tights, and then whoops, bends down, takes a couple of shots, but it's oh, Finn goes dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not what he signed up for. So that's exactly what they're doing. That's where the problem is.
I understand. And you talked about the reaction from the fans, which of course the video you made really did create a groundswell of support, especially from fans who reacted. We got the statement from CZW throughout that. And you said it yourself, the reaction from fans, you enjoyed it. You were happy about it because fans are very passionate. How do you feel about wrestling media? How do you feel about their reaction, how they covered the CZW situation following your video?
I saw very good stuff and very bad stuff. The very bad stuff was people mixing up things. Yeah, but this girl has an OnlyFans. This girl's taking sexy pictures. This girl's wearing less nothing when she's wrestling. I'm like, this is not what we're talking about here. Maybe now that I explained the mechanic story, you get it now. But they were or some people were completely clueless. They know by going on the show that they're giving their images. Yeah, we don't have a problem with that. I've seen a lot of people talking without even contacting none of us, just making their own opinions without knowing the full story, without knowing that WSU was branded as this big serious thing, and there's always a backstory behind something. And of course, I was not going to spend 20 minutes on explaining everything in my video. I wanted to make it short, quick, as professional as I could be, but sometimes it's really hard because you try to talk to these people in private and it doesn't work. So you have to do something. Somebody has to get their hands dirty. Otherwise, it's going to stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that other people might attempt the same thing. Now people, because so many people are boycotting CZW, people don't want to watch it anymore. Some girls don't want to go work there anymore. At least it scares other promotions like, okay, let's not try that. So if there's something good about it, I mean, right now there's that. But besides that, like a lot of media reached out, they wanted to hear more. So that gave me the opportunity, like you today, to explain more in details, like what's the backstory of this? Why? How did it came back? Because some people, there's one podcast that I heard is like, oh, CCW, made her, and she's spitting on them. I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm always like a big advocate of all, CCW and the days that I spent there. And I always credit them for, giving me the chance of pushing my own limits. And I'm very vocal about my love for John Zanding and Maven, and Brain Damage was always very, very kind to me. God bless him. And I had a great time with Nick Gage. There's so many like Black G's. I had like great matches, and I've never said anything against CCW itself. Like, and I'm very grateful for it. But people like we're all mixing that, and it's like that's why it took me like a good 2 months to actually say something. I was like, with my past, with my history, with the love I have for them, I'm like, can't do it, and then until I'm like, somebody has to do it, and unfortunately, it has to be me again. Like the commission back in 2002, like somebody has to stand up and say that's not right. And of course I got the very good of it and the very bad of it.
And throughout all the reactions, we did get other people talking about the poor conditions at CZW, poor treatment of staff and the bullying. Other wrestlers, Jordan Grace, Kimberly, came out, just to name those two, saying that they didn't sign any contracts to give full rights to their IPs and perpetuity and so on and so forth. It kind of feels right that it kind of feels like legal recourse is possible, but I'm just, this is me just spitballing here. What do you think about CZW's statement? Knowing what we know now about the poor conditions, how they treat women, or at least how they treat the promotion of women moving forward. Do you believe that their hands are completely clean in this controversy here?
No, still their brand is still their name. When you actually sell a product, you read the fine lines and you make sure that what you promise your talent who said yes to sweat for you, to bleed for you, that you respect that. And they did not. It was a quick buck, and I mean, sex sells, so let's sell it that way. We're gonna make more money. And I feel like I'm talking a lot about money here, but to me, it's so much more like a thing about respect and promises. Where like that's what we're doing, and that's what you're signing for, and then turns out to be something completely different because you change your mind and you just don't care what people who worked for you think because hey, it's my footage. I'm gonna do what I want, and doesn't matter that it's our butts out there and tits and whatnot.
Right.
So I thought it was a very pathetic statement. Like they didn't take any responsibility for nothing. Yes, you sold your footage, but did you know what they were going to do? If you did, well, shame on you because it's wrong. And if you did not, well, you're stupid. You make sure you know where your footage because that name is linked to you forever. I mean, CCW, Combat Zone Wrestling, that's the brand. People don't know much about Stonecutter. Now they know because they've been looking at it. But CCW is the brand, Combat Zone Wrestling, and WSU is the female division of it. And it was not Catfights. It was women's professional wrestling.
Do you see any closure to this situation? Like you've mentioned, CZW hasn't tried to reach out. Is there anything that can be done here that to end this? Do you see any kind of closure to all of this?
I don't know. The only thing that I'm really happy is that yes, some girls are never going to go there. New girls that are training are never going to go there because they know how it works. They know that they won't be taken seriously. A lot of fans cancel their subscription. A lot of fans won't join whatever, online footage they're selling or their network or whatever. So there's been progression where, okay, that's what you're doing. You don't care about your athletes. Well, we don't care about you either. And me as a professional women's wrestler, I'm not going to go work for you. So right there, like there might not be full closure would be like, hey, release your matches. It's fine, but call them what they are. Women's professional wrestling. The show is called Battle Tested Power, the anniversary show, the Queens and King of the ring or whatever. Call them by what they're what they are, and
Sure.
There won't be a problem. It won't be a problem at all.
LuFisto, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate it. Just to cap things off here, I want to touch base because we've talked about it, we've hinted at it, and there's other podcasts that you've done recently that chronicle your career wonderfully. And I know you've had a lot of struggles in the past, that you've had to face this type of issue with promoters who tell you, like you said earlier, you can't fight dudes, you have to wrestle in a bikini, we want cat fights, all that stuff. And your case with the Ontario Human Rights Commission is exactly that, where you fought to set up a precedent for wrestling in the province that then was helped out in the rest of the country as well, for basically removing the mandate of wrestling from the sports commissioner, which was a big deal. You faced this struggle your entire career. Do you see it getting any easier for women in the industry moving forward? Just give us some final thoughts on that front.
It is already a lot easier. Like, women are now part of the show. They have their own promotions. They're welcome at any schools. There's a lot of female students everywhere. There's great teachers out there now who care about their lady students. I'm thinking like Jonathan Gresham at Ring of Honor, or you got a lot of people like, I'm thinking Saraya Knight, who trains girls and boys up in England. And there's so many other schools where there's women everywhere now, and they're treated as equals, and they train with the guys, and everybody is working together. And when you go to wrestling shows now, if a guy knows he's working a girl, he's not going to go and say, oh, I'm wrestling the girl. He's like, hey, what do you do? Mm-hmm. So there's such a big evolution, and it's like that we're not seen as the girl in the room now. We're like the other worker you're working with that night. So it is a beautiful evolution, but if we want to keep it, we have to keep like moving forward, and we can't go back to women just being like sexual objects and portrayed that way. Yes, we can be sexy. Yes, we can be powerful. But so the guys, like, they can, it can, like, I always say wrestling is for everyone. Mm-hmm. It is a beautiful community with all skin colors. You got Asian, Black, you got trans, you got gays, you got straight. Like, it's a bunch of people that come together, and there's that beautiful mix of everything and for everybody. So it needs to stay that way, and it needs to stay a positive environment, and where everybody's helping each other, and that we work together, not against each other. So it makes me want to say thank you to all the male wrestlers who's been very supportive in that fight, because without you guys, we can't go forward. Like, if we're the only one like fighting, people would think we're just like crying, complaining again, but when there's a problem. But when we got guys, like, I'm thinking Ricky Champagne and Joey Janela and JT Dunn and even Mick Foley and Mikey Whipwreck, who've been very vocal about helping us female wrestlers, like, being taken seriously. It helps. So thank you so much.
That's fantastic. LuFisto, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me today. Why don't you take a second to let everyone who's listening right now, let them know where they can find you on the internet, wherever you like.
You can find me on Instagram at WoundedLuFisto. Twitter is at LuFisto. I got my Patreon /LuFisto, all kinds of stuff there. I comment about coffee. You have free matches, you got pictures, old stories. all kinds of fun stuff. Also, I'm on, well, go to LuFisto.com. That's the best way. All my social media is there. I'm working on a new website now, so merchandise, all kinds of stuff is there. So can't remember, LuFisto.com, and you'll find me.
There you go. And I'll make sure to put a whole bunch of links in the description here as well, just to make it really easy. So next time I'm going to pop onto your Instagram so we can talk coffee then, because I like commenting. LuFisto, thank you again so much for this talk. I really, really liked it. I hope everything gets settled in the best way possible for you, and to many more years of your career.
Thank you very much.
And thank you everyone for listening and or watching today. If you like the video here on YouTube, please give it a like. If you're listening to this on podcast application, give it a review, a 5-star, a like, a subscription, whatever you have to do over there to show some love. That'd be fantastic. Thank you everyone for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.